Hey y'all, Jordan from Carolina Sewn back here, and today I'm going to go over one of the biggest video requests we've probably ever had. Is how to do applique on a kid's shirt. So first I'm going to go over what you might need, and I'm going to be pretty thorough and show you some stuff you may not need. But this is going to be very beginner friendly. I'm going to do a pretty complicated design that you may not want to start with, but it's going to give me a lot of opportunity to show you how to do applique. So let's get into it. Okay, so going over what you need, to state the obvious, you need an embroidery hoop and a machine. I'm using a Baby Lock Meridian. This is going to be pretty much the same for any flatbed embroidery machine you're going to be using. You need a t-shirt. One thing I do like to mention is I do like to iron it, and I do shoot a little best press on there to stiffen it up, just so I got the flattest surface possible to work with. The hardest part with applique, it's extremely easy. The hardest part is going to be picking your fabrics, which is why I get my wife to do it. Save me the headache. But I got a lot. This design is going to be a little complicated. You may not need this many, but just get the fabrics that you like and some coordinating thread. You already know we're using Floriani. I like using 80-12 ballpoints when I'm using like t-shirt or loose knit materials. Marking pen, which you've seen me use in the past. I'm going to be using a few different kinds of scissors. This will be for trimming like the stabilizers and stuff like that. These are just any set of regular shears will work. And then two different kinds of applique scissors, just for different cuts. I'll show you those in the video. Stabilizers. A couple different ways that you can go with it is using fusible no-show. I like this stuff because you just iron it on, so I can do this at the same time that I'm pressing my shirt. The only thing that can be kind of a pro and a con is that it's very thin. So being thin, it looks good. It's not thickening the shirt, but it also has a lot more potential to pucker. So you got to kind of weigh your options there. In the demo, I'm going to be using medium cutaway. And this is pretty much what I recommend using for any kind of worn apparel. We're going to use some adhesive spray to stick that on, and you may need this, as I do, is water soluble topping. We're going to be using a little name at the bottom. It's a really thin chain stitch, so this is necessary. And then on the back, we're going to throw some Fuso Soft. This is an extra precaution that you'll take just so you don't irritate whoever's going to be wearing this, the kid or a baby, their skin. So that's about all you need to get started, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how to hoop, and we'll get right into it. Alright, so first thing you want to do is take your shirt, just flip it inside out, make sure your tag is going down and that your front side is up. And I like to make sure that my top is as flat as possible. That way we don't get any ridges when we stick it. Alright. I take a piece of pre-cut medium cutaway and my spray. I always go a little over, so you may not need as much as I do. But I give it a good little spray down. I like to fold this in half. And place it on the top first and then roll it down. So you do like this. Then kind of let it go. Put some pressure on it and push it outwards. Then I like to make sure that my stick was pretty good, and I'll start pulling these corners just to make sure everything is nice and stuck. It is, so now we can flip it right side out. Lay it just like this. And if you have any little ripples in here, you can just like a sticker, you can just push them out. And just like that. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention that I like to use is one of our rulers just for the marking purposes. So you need something to mark with. You also need a marker and your hoop. So what I like to do, I'm a big eyeballer. I don't do things very technically, and after you do several of these, you probably won't need to either. But I find the center of my shirt right there on the collar And you can do as big as you want, but just find and do a little mark on it. And now again, I eyeball the middle of where I want it to be. And I line my marks here with a mark that I made because I know that it'll be straight. And now I put another there and get a nice little cross here, which does not look like you can see on camera. But it's gonna look just like that. And now what you do is you grab your hoop and you want to loosen this up pretty good. That way it pretty much falls right into place once you get in there, but this back side is gonna go inside your shirt. And now, baby lock hoops have these 4 little tick marks that are used for centering your grid. I use these to line up to here. No, it's not dead perfect center, but it's like that far off, and I'm okay with that. So what I do now is you might have to mess with it a little bit to get it where you want it. Okay, now what you want to do, and it might be kind of hard to see, but you just want to line your crosshair that you made up with these tick marks. And that's going to get you almost perfectly centered, and then if you're not, you can do the rest in the machine. But this is where you really want to crank down. If you have a tool to tighten this with, you may want to get that tool out because you do not want this moving. You're going to be taking this in and out of the hoop a lot because of you're doing applique. So I like to get this nice and taut, but you don't want to stretch the shirt because if you stretch the shirt too much, embroider it, take it out of the hoop, it's not going to be great. So let's get this loaded on here and get started. Alrighty, so since we're using a flatbed machine, we got to make sure that we don't have the back of this shirt exposed or it's going to sew right through it, and that's not great. So flip it around the hoop. It's going to kind of look like a mess. I usually leave it like this until I can get it loaded in the machine. And then where the bottom of the shirt is, you're going to start to feel around and get it opened up so you can see that crosshair. So one thing you're just gonna have to do, you're doing applique anyway, so you're gonna be sitting here with it. You wanna make sure you're holding this out wherever you're at because you don't want to get caught up and damage anything, the shirt, or especially not your expensive machine. So now you can pull your design up, load your thread, and get started with the first step, and I'll show you what that is. All right, so once you've gotten everything threaded up here, you can lay down your first stitch. And the basis to applique is you got 3 steps. You have a placement stitch, you have a lockdown stitch, and that is basically after your first stitch, you're going to lay your fabric down, and the second step is going to stitch it down. And then you trim, and then it lays down a satin stitch. I'm going to show you real slow how that works. I'm going to go ahead and run this and probably edit past it. Alright, so once it does that stitch, you're going to take your fabric and lay it down just like that. Make sure you're overlapping pretty good. Don't skimp out on your fabric here. And I'm going to go ahead and start the machine. Alright, so now what that just did was it just did that same stitch around on top of the fabric. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the hoop out of the arm, do not unhoop anything, and lay it on a very flat surface. Alright, so now what you want to do is grab whatever applique scissors you're using. I'm going to use these since it's just all pretty much a straight line here. I'm going to try and keep everything in frame while I trim, but all you want to do is just trim the fabric away from what that stitch just did. Just like that. Okay, so now it's focusing. So that's what you do. You want to get as close as possible. I was looking through the camera and not my eyes, so I'm going to come back and just trim that a little bit better before I load it back in the machine. Okay, so I got it trimmed up like I want it. Now what it's going to do is it's going to run that third stitch, which is going to be some kind of a finishing stitch. It's either going to be a satin stitch, a blanket stitch. This is kind of a scrappy applique, so it's going to do just a zigzag around it. And I'll run that and let you see what that looks like. just like that. So what it did was it just finished that edge so we didn't have those raw threads showing. So I'm going to do this a few more times, just like that, so that way you can kind of get familiar with it. There's a few different kinds of stitching done in here. So it's going to be like this with a name at the bottom, and pretty much all these are going to be different colors. So I'm going to do a few different one of these so you can kind of see where different scissors can come in hand and stuff like that. So I'm going to set you back down and just let y'all watch this part. Alright, so for the next color, I've rethreaded, and I'm going to run it and let it do its shape again. Alright, so we're back at step number 2. Going to lay in your next fabric. Be careful that if you're using directional fabric, that you make sure that it's going the right direction. And just like that. Now I'm going to take this out. We're going to do a little trim on that. Another note, you definitely want to make sure you're being careful to get close, not cutting through your shirt. I'm going to carefully load it back in here. Get that, and we're on that last step, so we just let her start, and it's going to do our finishing stitch. Perfect. So now grab your next piece of applique fabric, lay that on there, let that run. Alright. So now what we have here is a lot more curves and a lot more little divots like that. So that's where I really like to use these K. Buckley scissors, and you can get really close. So you can see it got like right up to it with those scissors. It does a really good job. These are great too. They're just a little big for that, but like for straight stitches, it's definitely a little bit quicker. But that works great. I'm gonna load this back in and do that that finishing stitch. Okay, I'm not going to keep boring you with back-to-back applique. One thing I do just want to mention is that being new to applique, take your time cutting, because it's really, really easy. You've got a good pair of scissors to put a hole in your shirt, and then you kind of got to start back to square one, which is no fun. So just take it slow. I'm going to do some more of this, and then I'm going to catch you on that last step. All right, so I finished up these appliques here, and lastly we got the name. So now what you want to do is take a pre-cut piece of water soluble if you were doing a name. I probably wouldn't use water soluble for just the applique. It would be a lot of picking out, and I like as little of that as possible personally. So once you got that on, I just float it and stand nearby to make sure that it doesn't bunch up on me. And I just let her go. And just like that, we're done. Now we can take it out. I'm gonna come over here and flip this around and let you check it out. Now you can come in here and get your water soluble loose. And I'm so impatient, I've got to get rid of this purple. Like that. That's why I love this pen. And then you can come in here with some tweezers and get this out of these little nook spots. Now once you got that how you want it, you can come in here, flip the shirt back inside out again, free up all this, just give it a little tug and it'll come right off from that sticky. And then what I'll do is I'll bring in with my scissors and I'll just come and get fairly close to it, but you don't have to get super close. This stuff, after it's washed once, gets pretty soft. And then I'm going to come in with some Fuso Soft. I'm going to cut just enough to cover the edges of it and just press that on, and then you're done. And it's that simple. This came out really good. I'm happy with it. I hope that cleared some things up, answered some questions for you. I appreciate y'all watching. If you enjoyed, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. As usual, if you want to say anything, drop it down below. Give me a call, shoot me an email. And I appreciate y'all watching today. Thank you.